everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back. Kalu Aja is still with us. Kalu, yes, please land on your point because I didn't even hear what you said earlier. Can you?
Yeah, I was going to answer that question
Yes.
with two data points.
Okay.
The first of all being that the population growth in Nigeria is about 3%. GDP is growing about 3.8%. So that means that the Nigerian GDP must grow at 4 to even be positive. That's the first one. But let's go deeper into the GDP numbers. The largest contributor to GDP growth in Nigeria is agriculture. That's crop production, followed by trade. So crop production is about 26%, trade about, say, 50%. If you add both together, it's about 41%. The combined growth of these two sectors is less than 2%. So now the two largest growth sectors in Nigeria, agriculture and trade, are contributing less than 2% to growth in Nigeria. If you add telecoms, the growth grows up to 7%. That's 55% contribution to GDP, only growing at about 7%. If you take away telecoms, it falls to 2%. So you can see the GDP is growing about, the figures go about 3.86, but there's no impact on the people because that growth is not felt in the largest contributors to growth in Nigeria. Agriculture and trade are both posting anemic growth. So hence you hear GDP is going up, but the effect is not being felt on the streets. And that's what the numbers are basically telling us.
Why do we have that structure between GDP and realities broken? For economics, of course, they do say we shouldn't always take a look at GDP because there was a time in this country during the PDP years that the economy grew 6-7%. I remember I had interviews then, even with the ministers of finance, Okonjo-Iweala, Minister of Trade then, Dr. Aganga, Central Bank Governor, all of them, I remember many years ago. And the slogan then was jobless growth. You know, we were growing more than we are right now, but there was jobless growth. Why is there still a brokenness in structure in terms of now we're growing at about 3.4%, Nigerians are wailing. When we're even growing at 6%, the economy was not good. What exactly is the disconnect? Or perhaps should we just forgo anything about GDP numbers and take a look at other numbers around HDI metrics and some other things? How should we now begin to calculate the welfare of Nigerians?
Well, the other numbers are worse. If you want to do HNI, they are worse. There is no local government in Nigeria. Let me say it slowly. There's no local government in Nigeria that has clean pipe-borne water from the public taps running 24/7. None. So that's just clean drinking water. So we must fall back to GDP. The problem in Nigeria is that our GDP is driven by population activity, so agriculture, trade. When you talk about things like tech, education, public administration, things that do not involve these huge population activities, we don't do we don't do so well there. Banking in Nigeria is doing about 30% growth, but it's only 5% of contribution to GDP. Real estate is doing negative growth, but less than 1% growth. So the things that require population, technology, and can pay more does not get, the control is very, very low in Nigeria. Agriculture is the #1 sector that grows in Nigeria, but most of it is rural and subsistence. So when you say a farmer in Nigeria, what comes to your mind? It's a rural guy in a farm somewhere in the rural areas. But a farmer in Ohio is high paying, exporting, and earning goods and services, right? We don't do that here. So our key export is cocoa. Cocoa is bringing less than $1 billion into Nigeria, even when the price is that high. And that's where you have that disconnect that we're just outputting, i.e. on agriculture and trade, but the actual function to wages doesn't show up. Infrastructure is just too poor to allow productivity to rise, to allow the Nigerians to then get, should we say, more revenues for the output they are generating.
So is it fair to say that we are producing less and also distributing less? Because if you're saying that
Well,
our GDP is driven by population, I can agree somewhat because GDP is your output with my output with other 240 million plus Nigerians. But it also means that if you produce, for example, as Kalu, you produce 100% and I'm producing 1, other people are producing 0, it will still account to that 200 and something percent. I know you understand what I'm trying to say. So even with that
but the yield,
population, yes. So even with that
yeah, but the
population,
yield,
yes,
look
go
at it this
ahead.
way. Nigeria is the largest producer of yams in the entire world. We're the largest producer of cassava in the entire world. It's not because we're using fertilizer, it's that there are more Nigerians farming yam and cassava. But if you look at Thailand, Thailand produces less cassava than Nigeria, but the value add for cassava in Thailand is higher. They do cassava flour, they do the glucose from cassava. So that's where they then create jobs, wealth, and growth from cassava, not just the output from the number of farmers farming cassava in hinterlands in Nigeria and Thailand. That's the problem. If you look at our tomato output compared with, say, Cameroon, we produce more tomatoes by volume than Cameroon, but our yields are still lower because we should produce much more. So Holland produces more cabbage than Nigeria, right? We should do much more because we have more land, more people, more great weather than Holland, but they're producing more than us. So it's the yield that is a problem, not the output. Of all the yams Nigeria is making as making number one in the world, we are still below capacity in yams, cassava, and the rest of the stuff that we produce. That's the point. So the output is what's driving that GDP growth. But when you then see value add, we don't do so well in that.
So what sectorial shifts are required now to be able to make us have, job-rich growth? Let me put it that way. What kind of, say, you can start with agriculture.
Power supply. If you have cassava, it's gari or it's also glucose. You can export ethanol, but to convert cassava to ethanol or to glucose, you need power supply to process that cassava, to store it, to package it. So if you go anywhere in the north, you see onions on the roads, tomatoes on the roads, drying in the sun. If we simply have the drying machines, you could package all that stuff, export it, and earn dollars. So because you do not have the value chain, power, storage, infrastructure to take these goods across Nigeria, to package, to export, then we are operating at a very low scale of the value chain. Nigeria exports cocoa, but we don't process any cocoa locally. Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana want us to process cocoa locally to add value to what they export. And cocoa was the largest, in terms of commodities, largest returning commodity in the world last year. So that's the problem, that it's not just to output, but the value add. But you can't do value add without power supply. That's at the very minimum. Forget even roads, just power supply at the very minimum. That's what the problem is, Nancy.
If we take a look at productivity sectors like you've just mentioned, agriculture, manufacturing, we are seeing low value add there in those sectors and even output, I must say. Let's do a flip there and go to services and ICT. We do know that our services sector has inflated the GDP, but what can we do to create, is there even a space, opportunities for value add in the services sector, as well as more impact?
Of course. I mean, if you listen, there's a start that IFC and Google did it about IT tech skills in Africa. The number one African nation with IT skills was South Africa. Number two was Nigeria. But the unique thing about Nigeria is that the bulk of our IT folks are self-taught. So they basically learned IT on their own, all the skills, they learned it on their own. Imagine if Nigeria took $1 billion and set up an IT cluster and then basically train this youth that we have that are unemployed on all these IT tools, Python, coding and all that, and then exported that skill the same way the Indians have done with Tata and Infosys. That's revenues, that's less crime, that's VAT, that's job growth right there. So we're not attacking the areas that are not growing in Nigeria. We're focused on crude oil. Crude oil is less than 5% of our GDP, right? but it contributes about 87% of our foreign exchange. So we are focused on the sectors that have very, very low growth potential. The agricultural sector that has about 21%, we're not doing a lot there because we have no value addition, no roads, no power. So there are lots of opportunities in services. Entertainment, big opportunity. If you name any African star, Nigerians are going to be there. But how much of that music that is being exported is actually recorded as income in Nigeria? What is the value add of Burna Boy to say in Nigerian music scene? Are we selling cassettes here? Are we packaging and should we say copywriting his music here in Nigeria? Is any of his songs copyrighted here in Nigeria? So it's a lot of things that we're missing out by just not having the structure, the process, and the systems in Nigeria to capture that trade and keep that revenue in Nigeria.
Okay, Kalu, can we take a look at it this way? And do you think that perhaps in Nigeria we've seen over the years that the elasticity of poverty to growth has weakened to the point whereby GDP expansion no longer translates to perhaps poverty reduction?
The richest time Nigeria has ever been since 1960 was in 2014. That's the richest ever been. That's
20
GDP per
what?
capita was the highest. 2014. 2014, that's the richest Nigeria has ever been.
What happened that period, apart from that we rebased our economy?
Well, we had high oil prices. We had
Okay.
record foreign direct investments. We had record foreign portfolio investments. That's when Nigerians are coming back to Nigeria to take up jobs in Nigeria. The Naira was very, very strong. So we were trading, we were attracting investments, FDIs, FPIs. We were also investing in Nigeria in infrastructure as well. We had lots of Chinese loans, remember, to build international airports, to build the Kaduna to Abuja railway, to build the harbors. So there's a lot happening in Nigeria. Nigeria was quoted on the JP Morgan bond index and the Barclays bond index as well. So trade, we opened up the economy of Nigeria, the foreign capital came in, and we invested the foreign capital in Nigeria. Since then, we've had policies that have not attracted that foreign trade. So from 2014, the policy in 2014 was very liberalized, where you could bring in capital. We tried to remove the subsidy to invest that subsidy in the productive side of the economy. From 2015, we sort of changed the economy and went into a more restrictive top-down approach, where we said we'll subsidize petrol imports and we'll stop capital importation, i.e. would have a peg on how the Naira would exchange. All those restrictive policies drove away investors. Nigeria left the JP Morgan bond index. We stopped getting capital freely as we got in the past, and we're still suffering the effects today. Now we've gone back to chasing the foreign capital. Now we're issuing dollar bonds in Nigeria because we understand that we must be plugged in to trade. The point is this: if you don't trade, you can't fight poverty. Poverty is fought by that commerce, that trade coming into Nigeria, we trading, and then we exporting. You've got to allow commerce to happen. If you put too many barriers, both top-down welfare policy and even at the state and federal level, of course, trade collapses, and then Nigerians then start to suffer the effect of having no consumption and no production. This is minus the infrastructure. Just the policies alone would allow you not to take advantage of the unique attributes that Nigeria has.
Can we also take a look at the question of growth this way? You've talked about the quality of growth earlier. Let me also do a flip and take a look at the governance of it, the governance of growth. What do you think about that? Has the governance of our growth a bit misaligned? That's why we are not also feeling it as Nigerians?
I mean, the federal and the states don't talk. So we do not have, say, a 10-year policy to say we want to grow this part of the sector of the economy. 20 years ago, we were talking east-west road. The entire focus of the government, the federal government, state government, was on an east-west road to connect the east and the west. Why? Because trade among the east and the west in Nigeria is the highest, right? Both in petroleum and of course, food. We've abandoned the east-west road to now chase a new coastal road. It's the same direction, but we've just left the east-west road. Now we're doing a coastal road. What about railways, right? We have Abuja to Kaduna Railway, which is fantastic. The first standard gauge passenger railway in Africa. We then went and built the Itakbe to Warri Railway, standard gauge. I was connecting to nowhere, nowhere. Now we're building the Kaduna, Kano to Niger Republic standard gauge railway that will also connect to nowhere because the entire rail in Nigeria is narrow gauge. So the point I'm making is that when you then have this siloed investment where you are building railways to nowhere, connected to nothing, you don't get the benefits of this investment making in capital output. So that's the problem. The governance is not just corruption, it's the lack of capacity planning and project management. That's the problem we have. We have no Ajaokuta today because of project planning. And if we are able to just simply talk, forget the politics, talk state and federal, what we want to achieve, then pass project laws and then do investments to capture that commerce within the state, we do better for ourselves than even looking for the foreign investment to come in. If we're able to connect the road, all the states via rails or via roads, GDP goes up. Nigeria has no horizontal rail lines. All the rail lines Nigeria had were built by the British, i.e. they go from the north to the south to export things out of the country. If we don't trade amongst Nigerians, we can't increase commerce, we can't increase GDP, we can't create wealth. It's just really that simple, Nancy.
How do you trade when household consumption in Nigeria is about 60% of the nation's GDP, or even more than that? When even Nigerian households spend more than 60% now, at least I've not gotten the latest figures from the MBS, but the last one we're given, over 60% of households consume, household consumption is on food. So how do we even trade amongst ourselves if our household consumption is shrinking? Do you think that there's also a consumption crisis that is maxed? That's one. The other aspect of it, because if you're saying we are not trading, the little trade that we're doing perhaps are even in sachets. So there's already even a consumption crisis. There's a sachetization of Nigerian economy that started perhaps even like 10 years ago, but it became worse during the Buhari era. So how do you put all of that together?
Well, yes, there is a consumption crisis. The one big problem we Nigerians don't talk about is that there's no consumption in Nigeria. Nobody's spending money. Who can buy a new car or new air conditioner or new fridge? Nobody is consuming. We're just buying food to the next session and paying school fees. That's all Nigerians are doing. But look at it this way, Nancy. Any village you go to today in Nigeria, food is cheap. If you go to my village, there's cassava everywhere. I saw a guy on Twitter, he has lots of yams for sale. He's saying retweet my guy is on your timeline. There's onions in the north, there's mangoes in Benue. So why are they more expensive? Because to take that yam, that rice from Kebbi to Lagos costs more than buying rice from India to Lagos. That's the problem. It's not there's no harvest, but the process of getting the harvest to the cities where it is consumed is expensive. So the costs go up to 60%. How you know a poor country is how much they spend on food. That's one way you know a poor country. And Nigeria spends 60% of our income on food. That's one way to know it's a poor country. If we simply had rails, good roads, food will not be expensive. Why would food be expensive when you can put rice in Kebbi, move it by rail to Lagos? Why would rice cost 50,000 naira a bag? It's not possible. So that's the problem, that we're not integrating the logistics and the budget planning with our outcomes. If we say we want inflation to fall to 15, then we should invest in getting goods from the north to the south where food is eaten, because food is an inflation. Inflation is a food issue. If you want to drop inflation, you've got to attack food. So you want to invest in getting the food to the south where it is eaten, from the north where it is grown. That's the problem, Nancy. Food is expensive because infrastructure has collapsed. Once there's infrastructure, food prices, if you take away the cost of petrol, will fall, and then consumption will rise, and then the farmers will start to make money again. Right now, nobody's making any money or nobody's consuming at all.
The solution which you are giving us now could be mid to long term in terms of to untangle or to detangle the consumption crisis which we're having. Is there any way that the government at subnational levels as well as the central government, what are the things they can do to be able to bring up consumption? Like the Chinese are telling their people right now, their economy is export-led, export-driven. They are telling their people now, we need you guys to consume. We need you guys to consume. What will it take from the Nigerian government to be able to enlarge that consumption space when everybody in Nigeria is concerned with food, rent, and school fees, like you've just said?
Well, Nancy, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. The economy is a cycle. If you don't earn, you can't consume. If you earn 70,000 naira, you can't spend 50,000 on buying a bag of rice. You can't afford it. If you have 4 kids that are going to go to university and to fuel your car, you have to choose between rice and school fees. So you have to increase wages. But you can't increase wages and cause inflation if you don't have productivity in the economy, which means if you want to address productivity in the economy, got to provide power supply, security, and roads. And to do that needs money. Where's the money going to come from? Oil output. Where's the oil today? It's 1.6 million barrels per day. Why it is so low? Oil bunkering, insecurity, and the rest. To have insecurity, you got to pay your workers very, very hard. It's a cycle. You can't go in and change one thing and everything will change. You've got to allow Nigerians earn more by productivity, not by NLC saying pay us more. No, it's got to be by productivity gains. You can't pay people 70,000 naira a month and expect that they're going to guard oil pipelines that are going to take away hundreds of billions of dollars. It's not going to happen. That's why there's so much theft in Niger Delta. If you can get more money into the economy to build more infrastructure, then you can start to address the productivity gaps we're talking about. Again, Nigerians have to understand that the whole economy is based on food. It's just that simple. If you don't get the banditry, the insecurity out of the way, inflation is now a national security issue. If food prices don't fall down, then the cost of interest rates, NPR, cannot come down. So it's all tied at the hip. That's the point. We cannot consume if we are spending 60% of our income on food. How do you buy the cars? How do you buy the computers? How do you buy the phones? That's why the companies are leaving Nigeria, because nobody's buying anything. Nigerians cannot afford anything that is priced in dollars, including PMS. Very soon, PMS is going to go up in price because it's imported, but we have the largest refinery here in Nigeria. So this is a big issue. To answer your question directly, the shortest thing we can do, the short-term solution is to import food for a very, very limited period. Import the food whilst we address the insecurity.
But the government had done that. The
They've done that.
yes,
That's why food
yes.
prices have gone down a bit. You've seen food prices have come down a bit because they start to import. We can't continue that forever. Import the food for a short term, drop inflation, but invest in the value chain of agriculture in Nigeria. That's just what they have to do. They have to do more. Rice is still 50,000 a bag. It's got to come down. It's got to really come down. People have to eat.
What more should they do? Because if they are looking at, if they are already importing, of course, the directive from the president a few months ago, I think the president gave them 180 days or so to import. I think about 6 months, 150 or 180 days. What do you think that the federal government or the Federal Ministry of Agriculture should begin to do? Of course, theirs is policy, but we should also take a look at even the subnationals, beyond sending a kind of, I saw was it the memo or the internal circular over the weekend, that they should pray for God's intervention for national food security. I'm like, who are those in this Ministry of Agriculture, for crying out loud? God cannot do for man what man can do for himself. God has given us food, has given us the ground to till, given us good weather, given us capable hands. Come on. Kalu, did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, have you seen their budget? The Ministry of Agriculture budget has got.
I saw their budget, and
100 million naira for hairdressers. It's in the budget for Ministry of Agriculture. There's grinding machines in the Ministry of Transportation budget. So it's a mess. But let's answer your question directly. What they have to do is to take care of the insecurity. The problem is just this weekend, 200 were killed in the food basket of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean? I mean, you have to go to school to understand that if you kill 200 in the food basket, there will be less food in the food basket. So our food output locally is falling. And until you stop the insecurity, you have to keep on importing. If we're not careful, we're going to turn food to how PMS was. We didn't used to import PMS before. We just imported PMS once when we want to do turnaround maintenance. But then PMS imports became the mainstay of the economy. So if we're not careful, if we simply allow the insecurity to continue in the north, is it the north central, northeast, and all that? We have bandits, we have local guys killing people. If we don't take care of it, food becomes imported, and that's going to be what's going to happen. We're going to import tomato, granite oil, yams. We'll then import the same yams that were the highest producers in the entire world. Benue is the largest producer of yams. There's a local government there, makes more yams than the whole, that place there. And now the people are fleeing from there. So it's a big, big, big problem. If you don't address that, then we're going to be in, you can't increase or reduce interest rates to fight that kind of inflation. You only fight that inflation from output. So if we can't have local food production, we've got to import food. It's taking them a year to do it. And we don't need the government to import food. Like 6 months, say you can bring in food and not pay duty. That's what they should have done a long time ago. But they've taken a lot of time, customs to pass this guideline, that guideline. So foods are still expensive. The best subsidy should have been Nigerians to say we're going to subsidize food imports by not taxing you if you bring in food or tractors or fertilizers. Dangote is exporting fertilizers. Do we have enough locally? But that's a question of another show, yeah.
If we take a look at the politics of these economic narratives, what do you have to say about it? Because the government is going all about town. In the June 12 broadcast, the president alluded to it a bit. His spokespeople come out on social media, even different programs to talk about, oh, the economy is looking bright. We are not where we are supposed to be at, but we are getting better. What do you think about the politics of these economic narratives? Is it true? I don't want to, or is the government lying? Let me put it that way, because this question is not political, it's factual. Is the government lying, or are the numbers being maxed? Or are the numbers saying something else and the government is saying something else? For a president, as I said, okay, he's looking at the 6% economic growth. I've spoken to the Minister of Finance a couple of times, and he keeps on mentioning that. And he says, okay, they want to grow even double digit because they have a $1 trillion focus by 2030.
Look, again, let me give you some data, their own data. Unemployment rate in Nigeria is 4%. 4%. So just rough calculation, they are saying that out of if you have 100 folks looking for work, 96 are employed. That's what they're saying. So how did they get 4%? If you work 1 hour in 1 week, you are employed. So if you wash a car for 1 hour in 1 week, according to the government of Nigeria, you are employed. So unemployment falls to 4%. So there we go, 4%. What about food? Inflation, I mean. Inflation was about 33%, but it was 50% of the inflation, the CPI, was based on food. So what they do, they rebased the CPI methodology. They took food from 50 to 40. Inflation fell from 33 to about 24. So inflation has also come down as well. And we're going to rebase our GDP as well. So unemployment is now at 4%. Inflation is at 23%. We've shaved off 10% from our GDP. From the inflation, our GDP is going to go up to about 500 billion because we're going to do the rebase very soon. So you see where I'm going to with this. It's not that the numbers, they are not lying when they say inflation has fallen, nor are they lying when they say unemployment is 4%. But it doesn't make any sense. Which Nigerian would agree today that unemployment is 4%? Which Nigerian listening to you today doesn't have a cousin or sister at home looking for a job? But when you base your planning on 4% unemployment, then of course you're going to miss the mark. There is no private company that's going to say unemployment in Nigeria is 4%, but that's the official figure. And then when you repeat it, then of course the numbers look rosy. And that's one problem that they are having. The numbers can be manipulated. There are facts, and then there are damn lines, right? There are statistics, facts, and there are lies. And we seem to be playing with the numbers to get a narrative. But overall, I think that they've started the politics a bit too early. We all know that Nigeria is a 4-cycle administration. That every 3rd year, we abandon governance and go into politics. So we have to do budgets and spending for politics. They've started a bit too early in this administration. We're now focusing on spending to assuage or to win constituencies. So I'm a bit worried. If you look at this year's budget, We have a deficit of about 17 trillion, or say 13 trillion. 6 trillion, no, 7 trillion is on in sessions by the National Assembly members. Why? So they can buy their support towards elections. 7 trillion. If you remove those insertions, the budget deficit falls by 50%. That means less borrowing, less inflation. But we're allowing insertions of nearly 7 trillion, not billion, 7 trillion, because we want to play politics. And that's the problem with the country. We're spending too much, we're not spending right, and it's going to tell on us. Yeah.
Okay, just 2 questions before we go. We have like 2 minutes left. I would want to ask you your final take on this issue which we're talking about, the growth versus reality. Perhaps 2 things you will recommend that the government does. When I mean government, it could be to the central and to subnationals very quickly. Then the second question is the issue of the forbearance. I'd like to get your take on that, what the central bank is telling the banks. Guys, if you had a loan, let's say 10 naira or 10 million, you shouldn't be declaring huge profits and bonuses to yourselves and dividends. Use that to fill it up. So just please explain to our viewers what that means, the issue of the forbearance, and what could be the impact of this on banks moving forward, as well as even the stock market moving forward, because even the banks, are a major component of the NGX.
Yeah, on your first question, what can they do? I mean, align state and federal policies. Pick something. Even if you build roads or homes, build 100,000 homes in all the states in Nigeria. You are creating jobs, you are empowering consumption, you are empowering the GDP growth of Nigeria. Just doing that alone, just doing something massive like that, direct works program. We're going to build 100,000 homes. There are carpenters, there's wood, there's aluminum roofs, there's iron nails. You empower people, you drive consumption. Borrow money and do it. Nothing wrong with that. You borrow money, you employ people, you train them how to build homes, they become carpenters, plumbers, and the rest. Nothing wrong with that. And people have homes. You are linking the banks, you are linking the PFAs, because you're going to get loans from them to build those homes. That's how you grow an economy out of a deficit. You do deficit budgeting with a targeted capital output, and then you create jobs and consumption. That's what you should do. Work with the states, ignore the politics, build 100,000 homes in every state. That's on the first one.
The forbearance.
On the forbearance, you've answered it yourself, Nancy. If you are owing, keep the money in house, and then of course build up the capital of the bank. It would affect the stock market, because if you don't pay dividends, Nigerians don't like your shares. But it would help the banks in long term, because they're making their capital a bit stronger.
Okay, we'll look at that on another edition of the program, perhaps the larger implications of this. But many thanks, Kalu, for joining us this morning. Thank you, as always, for your insight, and I'll see you soon, my friend. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Have a good one. Take care.
You too. Bye. All right, I've been speaking with Kalu Aja, who is a financial strategist as well as an economist, and that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all, as always, for keeping a date with us. Please keep a date with me tomorrow, same time on this channel. Be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. On behalf of myself and my team, do have a lovely day. I am Nancy Naji. Bye for now. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms, where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.